again, it goes back to, having that bragging rights from breeding standpoints, promotion of your kennel standpoints, all that adds up. So there's a lot of benefit to pushing your dogs for these titles. When it comes down to it's a good sitting day, good conditions, it's going to take speed. My German short hairs are going to beat the Griffon because they just cover the ground just a little faster. Now, when it comes to really tough scent conditions, or I need to handle a dog into a situation, I promise you my Griffons are going to beat my short hairs 1,000 times. It's just the way it is. To me, the wild bird hunting versus field trialing, there's no difference. It's good dog training at the end of the day.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of GDIY presented by Standing Stone Supply. My guest this week is Kevin Kiper. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Nick?
Living the dream as always. So I'm here, I recently, just last night, recorded with Lauren Trout, who is kind of, you and him are kind of going head to head in the point leadership board of the UFTA with just a couple weeks from my understanding of wrapping this up. So I'm excited to kind of pick your brain and what that means to you and why you even like getting involved in the points chase structure. But first, let's start off, introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're calling from, what kind of dogs you run, and the type of hunting that you like to do, all the fun stuff.
So my name's Kevin Kiper. Live in Lexington, Kentucky. Own German short hair pointers as well as wired hair pointing Griffons. We have a few poodles that my wife owns for house pets, more or less. I have used them on occasion for flushing dogs. They're great, excellent retrievers and have a huge prey drive, contrary to what everybody thinks, being foo-foo pretty dogs laying on the couch. Just something fun to play with,
Yeah.
So as far as the points race and getting into all that, Gabe Kessinger is also in that as well. He's right up there with Lauren and I as well. So he's definitely not one to ride off anytime soon for sure. So.
Yeah, Gabe. It's like there's three guys, you, Lauren, and Gabe, and I'm interviewing you and Lauren. I didn't even talk to Gabe about doing it because I wasn't even aware that he was in the race. But because when we initially discussed doing this, it was really just kind of you and Lauren at the top. Right. And then when I asked you guys to come on, let's talk about it, let's have a little bit of fun with it, I checked the standings yesterday and I saw Gabe was up there. I'm like, wow, the point leadership can really change pretty quick. When you first look at it, you're like, all right, well, Lauren or Kevin have it in the bag, and then next thing you know, you look in a week or two and somebody's done caught up with you.
Absolutely. So it's even more so a tighter race now than what it was for what those points show. This past weekend, we were in Mount Carmel, Illinois, Wabash Quail Club, and they hosted a trial out there, 2-day event. And Gabe and I come home with some placements and even tighten that gap up a little tighter, made it a closer race. But you're exactly right. It can turn from week to week. It's very competitive, and those guys are great competitors, and they have great dogs,
Yeah.
So at any given time, it can change.
Yeah. So for the listeners that may not be familiar with UFTA and what the points that we're even discussing really reflect, kind of give everybody a rundown of what you guys are actually chasing, because it's more than just bragging rights. It's more than just running a bunch of trials and winning a bunch. I mean, that's obviously part of it, kind of sustained success or consistent success, if you will, throughout a season. But just break down the actual concept and why the UFTA organization even keeps up with this. Okay.
So UFTA started this program, and this kind of builds along the course of the year. They take your top 10 runs and take the points from those runs, and that is where our totals come from for the Dog of the Year race. The reason they only do the top 10 runs and drop your lowest scores is just to keep it from being an out-and-outright trailer race. This guy went to more trials than I was able to go to because of my work situation or home life, because it is a balance. So they count your top 10 highest scoring runs for that dog of the year race. And how that's calculated is for every trial that you enter, they award points for the number of dogs entered in that trial. So say there is 10 dogs entered in a trial, for example, for the sake of round numbers, easy. For first place, you are awarded 6 points per the times the number of dogs in that trial. So that would be 60 points for first place. Second place, you're awarded 5 points, so on and so forth down the line. So they take those runs. Obviously, the bigger trials, the bigger the number. So some of our trials at Cedar Creek in the spring, late winter, early spring, we had some huge trials January and February leading up to nationals. Everybody coming in getting some practice, and if you could do well at those trials, you could put 200 to 300 points on the board in one run, and that's how you get those higher numbers up there. So obviously, the more participation, the higher the points are at stake and the more that opportunity there is for improvement. And also this time of year comes down to, is there enough dogs in that trial? You have to play those points games sometimes. Is there enough dogs in that trial to justify, I need to put a few extra dogs in that trial to, there's extra points there, so on and so forth. And those guys watch those. But the big reason behind it is showing the best of the best. What dogs are the most consistent throughout the season? That's why UFTA, the top 3 dogs in the Dog of the Year race, get an automatic bye spot into the finals. And that's a big deal. Not always the best dog wins on that day. There is some luck in this game. A bird accidentally pops and gets up out of the field for no reason. It's happened. And there you are left. There's no extra birds in the field, and you have a 2-bird run when you should have a 3-bird run, and you're out of it. So those top 3 dogs getting that automatic spot into the finals and not having to qualify at nationals is a big deal. And that's what a lot of guys are competing for, as well as the title of National Dog of the Year for that division. We have 2 divisions, the amateur, which is 2 years of age or younger on your dog, and then the open. And open is open to any age dog. So, again, it goes back to, having that bragging rights and having, being able to say, hey, I have the 2022 National Dog of the Year, the 2023 National Dog of the Year. And from breeding standpoints, promotion of your kennel standpoints, all that adds up. So there's a lot of benefit to pushing your dogs for these titles. And investing back in the organization is a big one. What we do throughout the course of the season as trial host, like I host some of the trials at Cedar Creek alongside Joey Preston. And, people don't realize, but a lot of times that's funding our national championships. The sanctioning fees, we pay back $20 per dog to UFTA. And so the more of that, the more prize money come down to national championships, the nicer the trophies, the more prestige that's put into it.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what I find appealing about UFTA is you just shed some light on there's a bunch of kind of checks and balances throughout this whole organization and how it's structured to where, to your point on the points chase, yeah, you can go out there and if somebody really wants to just trial every weekend and rack up points that way, you could.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's still the top 10 runs for each handler and dog. So it kind of brings that bar down to where, to your point, right, if you have a busier life, maybe you want to go hunting instead of trialing one weekend, as long as you have 10 quality runs, you're still in the running, and it provides you a little bit more strategic opportunity. But then it also still incentivizes people to be competitive and get out there and run, which every time they're running in a trial, it's going to build that pot up for the national in February. Mm-hmm. And so it literally feeds one side of it, feeds the other side very nicely. And that's what I really appreciate about the UFTA so far.
Absolutely. And it as well, and I'll speak because when I first got into this, I ran one dog. And Over the years, I've developed into to running multiple dogs, and my wife says she's divorced from. Well, that's a lie. She doesn't, because she goes with me. Don't let her kid you. She loves going to the bird dog trials and watching the dogs as much as I do. But from September till April, we're in bird dog season. And so,
Hmm.
that's what our world revolves around. And for somebody that works a full time job and has a family and kids, it's a lot harder for them to get away and be able to make those, weekend trips to go out to Illinois and hunt, or go down to Alabama, or go up to Ohio, or go up to Pennsylvania and run some of these trials. So they may only have the opportunity, if they're based here in Kentucky, for example, to go to the Elizabethtown, Kentucky, the Lincoln Trail, and come to Stanford at Cedar Creek and run in those trials. That may be all that their lifestyle dictates, and that way it still gives them an opportunity to be competitive, and doesn't take away and give them a disadvantage. And to me, that's a big part, because that's just helping the members out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're going to take a guy that does this for a living, and he's going to win it every year. Because I work a full time job, so does my wife, and so it would be a lot harder for me to beat a guy that does this for a living, says trains dogs, and he's paid to promote that dog, and he's going to a trial to win, and
Yeah.
he can travel and do that every weekend, week in and out. So it gives the working man better opportunity as well.
Yeah. Your shot is just as good as the other guy if you
Absolutely.
have the consistency. And again, the thing that kind of kept me from getting involved in any kind of trial structure or organization throughout the years was I always had a hard time foregoing an actual hunting trip or day in the field actually
Right.
hunting wild birds to go trial, because I never felt like, well, if I wanted to do that, I can't be competitive by only doing the occasional trial. And kind of looking into UFTA and the offerings and seeing that checks and balances, if we want to call it that, within how it's structured, really allowed me to see, like, okay, this is something that, once a month I can go run a trial and maybe get lucky and hit a couple, doubles day and still be in the running, or at least
Right.
competitive and qualify for the nationals. It's not something that I have to quote unquote campaign my dog to, where every week I'm traveling to Alabama, then Illinois, then Kentucky, then North Carolina.
Yep.
To your point, like, there's enough trials around in certain areas to where you can figure out something that really works for you, especially September through April. That's a long, long period of time that really you only need to find, like, 3 or 4 good weekends, and you can qualify your dog for nationals. And then once you get to nationals, what you talked about earlier is like just a little bit of luck on your side. You have a couple good runs, you can win the nationals
Right.
without having to quote unquote campaign your dog.
Right. And there's a lot of dogs that have done that over the years, and again, National's not necessarily the best dog that always wins, because there is a little luck involved. And that's also where that 10 run high point comes into play, is it kind of takes that luck out of it. There's days that, for dogs are dogs, they're never perfect. I've never seen one. I'm never going to see a perfect dog. It's just the way it is. But you'll have a little bad luck today, you may not tomorrow. And those 10 runs, that kind of takes some of that luck out of it and truly shows the best of the best.
Hmm.
So that being said, you get to the nationals, you have to have a little luck on your side sometimes at nationals. An extra safety bird flew into the field, or anything of that nature can take place, or you may just, that be you may hit 99 out of 100 shots, and that one day you miss that shot, that just that little bit of bad luck happens.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, talking to certain people, it's like, even in the conversation with Lauren, he was talking about a run last year to where in the Nationals, he had like a 2 minute, 3 second run and he came in fifth. There were some crazy times in Nationals, because I was there last year kind of watching it, scoping it out,
mhm.
seeing what it was about. And, you start checking some of those times and leadership boards of all the people such as yourself, Lauren, all these guys that do it at a high level, and they're really passionate about it. You start seeing these times, and I'm just sitting there like, man, I can't imagine going out there and doing a, minute 45-second run in 3 different zones with your dog. But, when you start talking about the nationals in February, the sitting conditions, the cover, if all that's right and your dog knows the game, you can go out there and really have some blazing speeds.
Oh, absolutely. Zeke, I won National Dog of the Year with the Amateur National Dog of the Year with him last year. And come down to nationals, and he actually had the fastest times in the finals. He had 2 fast 2-minute runs. I don't remember the exact seconds, but just it goes back to a little bit of bad luck. I had some rainy conditions, and I couldn't get a bird to fly, and had a bad safety, so I lost my 2 shot points. And Hardy and Craig were able to slip in there and got excellent dogs, and they capitalized on my mistake and were able to slide in there for first and second, and in the national championship, knocking me down to third. And that's just part of the game.
Yeah.
Again, their dogs have to do their job. They could have just a little bad luck, or I could have had better luck, or you can say it, twist it any way you want. It just, but at the end of the day, everything has to go together. But you're right. It is. You sit back and look at it from a distance, and you're like, holy cow, these guys are just, But when you get to the national championship, you're looking at the best of the best that's standing up there.
Right.
And that's what's representing our organization.
Yeah. And when you deal with kind of any level of competition or game where everybody's out there to win, nobody really gets involved in competition to be the guy that's just like, hey, I participated. Right. Everybody's out there to win. But when you start talking about anything in life that involves preparation, discipline, trying to get through it and be good at it, you still need a little bit of luck on your side, because when you go and look and you watch one of these trials for the first time, you're looking at it and you're like, obviously my dogs can hunt a field, find some birds, and retrieve. Mm-hmm. With a little bit of luck, I can go out there and win this. And that's true. You can go out there, have a little bit of beginner's luck, and I'm sure that you've seen somebody just show up, and then next thing you know, they kind of get a big head maybe, and they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Yeah. But when you really start looking at it from afar, again, the players that are doing this every year, doing the high points chase, like you start seeing the level of consistency to where it's just like you don't see too many people, at least in my limited experience so far, jump up in the leaders and then next week they're like, in last place. I'm sure it happens, but it seems like the top guys are always up at around the top, and it's just kind of those little minor differences in your run to where, that 5-second delay on a retrieve really shot you in the foot. And that was something that I didn't really kind of put into my head the right way going into it, to where the little small details matter. The 2 points for the shot bird matters at the end of the day. It's amazing how by the end of the weekend, when you start looking at that scoreboard, all those little details that you don't think really matter all that much, it's like, oh, what's 4 points, right?
Right.
But when you guys are at that high level, those 4 points can make or break your run.
This last nationals, that 4 points was the difference between first and I want to say 8th place was the difference between first and don't quote me on that exactly. That's going on strictly off of memory, but it was right around that. But I was that guy. I come in my very first UFTA trial I run in. I run with my old male dog Shaker, who's a wire-hair pointed Griffon. And I come out my very first trial and won with a 6-minute and some change run. And I thought, boy, this is so easy. Like, what are these? And I got this. And I didn't win another trial for probably 2 years. And I really was. I had that beginner's luck and got into it, got addicted to it. And that's the way I was, And so that does happen. But it's a fun sport to play, and it's addicting. It really is. But at the end of the day, you're exactly right. It is about, you got to learn the rules, learn to play the game, because a lot of those decisions you make while you're in that field, like you were talking about, that 5-second retrieve and making those decisions can cost you in the end. And so, everybody knew getting into this sport. I tell them, say, look, read the rule book, learn the rule book, ask questions. I haven't met a person in this organization that would, not answer a question if you asked them and be rude about it. They would be like, hey, no, I'll help you out. Here's what you need to do. This is that situation. Because there are a lot of different situations that you can't even think of.
Right.
And UFTA works diligently on getting the rules every year addressed accordingly, because I promise at some point this year, there's been a situation that's come up that we've never encountered before. And UFTA is going to be like, well, this is how we're going to move, moving forward. We're going to address that. Mm-hmm. But learning those rules, and I encourage people to go to a trial, and a lot of trial grounds let you ride with the judge, to learn here and there. Stand and watch the fields, ask the competitors, introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm new getting into this and I'm wanting to learn. And they'll stand there and talk to you all day long and answer questions. And, I tell everybody that's getting into it, that's the best way, just to start coming to them and watching. And then eventually you got to start participating. And until you do start participating and getting yourself in those situations, because it happens so fast in the field a lot of times. And I've been doing this, this will be my sixth year doing this. And there's times I still make the wrong decision. This past weekend, I made the wrong decision. I had a good safety bird, flew toward the judge, but the bird was hooking to the right. And I was like, well, I'm going to have a shot opportunity. It turned on to the right. And then instead I made the shot and just flat missed the bird. When I had a good safety the whole time, I could have just said safety while it's flying toward the judge, caught my dog, and been done. Mm-hmm. So, you still have those little moments, but it's making that split second decision that until you just put yourself in those situations, you don't have true appreciation for.
Yeah. I mean, I can piggyback on that point just from my personal experience. The few trials I've run, is anybody listening to this podcast, I'm really measured about what I go and do and attempt to do and learn. And so, like, from the nationals last year, just kind of grilling and asking a whole bunch of questions, and then coming to these trials, I'm asking a whole bunch of questions. So I'm wrapping my mind around what I think I want to do, what I want to strategize and give a shot. But once you get those answers and you kind of have at least the basic understanding of the rules, going and doing it and applying it are completely different, because then you're in a race against a clock. And somebody who, I went out there purposely to where I was telling myself, look, I'm not going to get overly competitive. I'm still learning the game. I'm learning the ropes. Like, I don't have any expectations. Let's just kind of see where we land and figure this out. But even without that kind of rushed tempo that I force myself not to get in, you still get in certain situations to where you do have to make a quick decision. And not being completely familiar with some of the rules, I found myself in the field in the middle of a run asking Leo, the judge, well, what are my options here? And that's something that, again, every time I've been in the field, the judge that's been in the field has had a vested interest to where they are rooting for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they want to see you succeed. They want to see quality dog work.
Yes.
And so it's not like they're out to get you. They're there to help you if they can. Mm-hmm. But that's also, it kind of comes to where you have a very clear rule base, and there's really no subjectivity to the judge. They're not knocking you on style. They're not knocking you on handoffs or any of that stuff. It was just really just receptive and open. It was just a good feeling to be out there, not feeling like anybody was out there wishing that you fail or anything like that. And if you needed help, even in the middle of a brace, they're there to help you if you ask the right question. Right.
Absolutely. They'll always, when it comes to rules and situations, they can help you as much as they can, and they will. But again, like you said, really, I look at a judge as a in the field as an ally, because you can utilize that to your advantage, so to speak. If you don't exactly know, there's been times I've dropped a leg on a bird and that bird flew and got into the edge of the woods and I couldn't see my dog. And I asked the judge, the judge is ideally supposed to keep his eyes on that dog the whole time during that field trial. And my dog may have been halfway to that bird and swapped ends and went on point on another bird, which I can go over and act on that bird, but I can't see that dog to make that call. Hey, Judge, can you look over, can you ease over to the edge of the field and check on that dog? And hey, he's standing here on point.
Yeah.
I can go on and move forward and act. There's all kinds of situations like that where, again, and it's just a good group of people that you're running with, the guys in the organization for the most part, the judges, the whole 9 yards, the trial hosts. They want to see everybody succeed because, again, that's the future of our sport, especially these younger guys getting into it that's never ran in field trials before. And, we want them to see them do well. We want to see them come back next time and the time after that and keep building this sport and the breed of our dogs and bettering the whole environment all the way around, from breeding of the dogs to the competition trials to, at the end of the day, you're breeding better wild bird dogs. You're the whole 9 yards just getting improved over time.
And that you bring up something interesting in the young guys getting involved in this. I've gone around. I mean, in the hunt test world, you have something like NAVHDA, where there's plenty of young people kind of getting involved and,
right,
and doing that stuff. But when you talk about the competition trials, when you go and check them out, depending on which organization you're going to check out and what type of trial, it's not the most wide ranging when it comes to age, right? Usually most trial organizations is kind of on the older scale. And that's something I noticed with UFTA, to where you do have a wide range of age participants in this, to where I think, there's some guys to where I think I saw like a couple 60, 70-year-old guys running their dogs, all the way down to like, Lauren is in his early 20s. And you have, kids hanging around the dog trials. You got young guys planting the birds. Like it's very inclusive I can vouch for what you're saying, to where like it does truly come across as a vibe of, we want people to come get involved. And we not only want you to show up once, we want you to have fun and some success so that you continue coming back in the future as well.
Oh, absolutely. And even at national, the youth have their own division to run for. They're running against other youth, depending on their age, whether they're allowed to shoot for themselves or not, and depending on their age, if have to be accompanied by a parent or guardian out in the field. So their UFTA as a whole is an organization is big on the promotion of that. That's what we look forward to. That's the future of this. Because in 30 years, if those guys aren't coming up in the ranks to do that, there's no future.
Yeah. I mean, even down to the detail of, at the Nationals last year, I attended the banquet, and, you go to a whole bunch of different banquets. You go to different organizations, individual chapter banquets for NAVHDA or whatever. You might have some raffle items, right? To where some people might win and come away with something. But talking to Brandon, it's like, y'all had such a large amount of raffle items, if you will, but it was designed so that everybody in attendance is leaving there with something, pretty much.
Yeah.
There might be a few people that left empty-handed or whatever, but that was kind of by choice, from at least from my perspective, is if you didn't win something, you just didn't even put your name in the hat, which is, fine. But that was something I can't say that I can recall ever attending, to where everybody involved with UFTA was real adamant about, we want everybody here coming and having a good time. And it's like, again, a lot of people might hear competition and within a trial structure, and they may shy away from it. Maybe they don't like competition. Maybe they're afraid, to where, like me, I know I'm a competitive guy by nature. I never really wanted to open that door and kind of muddy the waters of what I love to do and mix that up with competition, because I was worried that I might start caring too much about one over the other, right, when it comes to wild bird hunting or competition. But it really just doesn't come across as a competitive environment, even though that is what it is once the trials actually kick off during the day.
Right. It is. And that is also what's great about the season being the length that it is, because you have those opportunities where you can still go wild bird hunt all fall if you want and qualify your dog for nationals for next year this spring. And, you have those opportunities. You also have that opportunity that you could wild bird hunt and still be competitive in the dog of the year race. You can wild bird hunt and still be competitive at nationals. You get those opportunities where some of the organizations, their trial season's not as long, or it is longer, but you have other requirements that you got to do. So it makes it a little tougher in some situations. Some situations it doesn't. But I know myself, going wild bird hunting, that's a big enjoyment of mine. So it's a balance. I go trialing some, go wild bird hunting some, and there's times that in the dog of the year I'm like, hey, this is going to be a big trial. Last year, for 2022 dog of the year, my Zeke dog won the amateur national dog of the year, and I was on my way to South Dakota, and we had a trial at Cedar Creek, and I sweated it the entire time because I'm going wild bird hunting, and here he is in contention for dog of the year, and I couldn't stand it. I was nervous about it the whole time. I'm calling Joey Preston, the trial host, like, who did what? How many dogs were what's going on? And he's like, man, don't worry about it. I'll let you know when it's all done. I'm like, oh, you're killing me. But that's part of it. But that getting that excitement out of it is what it's all about. And seeing the kids coming up into it, like you said, you mentioned the bird planters being young, and some of the judges. I know we had a testing day there at Cedar Creek and got some new judges tested for UFTA. They passed their test, get them on the judges list. So it's definitely growing and improving, and it's going to continue that direction and moving forward. And it's not what I love about UFTA. It's not everything set in stone, and it's this way or the highway like you run into with some of the other organizations. They're open to hearing what people have to say. They're open to the membership and what, for the betterment of the organization.
Yeah. And from my understanding, the way Brandon put it to me is like UFTA is not owned by any individual. It's truly membership owned. And that's why it's so open to its feedback and suggestions from its membership base, because without the membership, the organization goes under. And from my understanding, every dollar that goes in the organization is essentially coming back out to, whether in the form of prize pots or just putting on these events. It's not like nobody's making any money off of it. It truly is just a big membership group of people that are out there just trying to play this fun game with their dogs and do something different aside from maybe just wild bird hunting, especially in regions which we find ourselves in, to where maybe the wild bird hunting is not what it once was.
Right.
And we still want to get out there and have fun and enjoy our time with our dogs. And this game affords a lot of people that opportunity.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the biggest reasons I went to the first field trial I went to, is because I'm like, well, bird season's over. What do I do now? I've got a bird dog. He's awesome sitting on the couch with me, loving on me every night, but I still want to go hunting and do. So I started looking into the field trials, and I talked to a few guys, went to my first one, and I watched. And then, like I said, I competed in my first field trial not long after that, and had a 6-minute run at Cedar Creek on their C field, which is one of their amateur fields, and won the trials. How to this day, I don't know, but I did. And again, I thought, man, this was easy. I got this, And
then you got humbled.
and then I got humbled really fast. But that's the way it goes, But that's the big reason I got into it, is because bird season's only so long. And again, living in a region that birds are getting a little more scarce here and there. If we go to the UP to grouse hunt, we also go to lower in Michigan, around Mayo area, some and hunt. Been to South Dakota, out around Lake Andes, pheasant hunting. Making those trips is not always an option. So it's a good option to keep a dog tuned up, as well as, keeping them in birds and working. Yes, they're pen raised birds, but then again, I'm a competitive guy. So it gives me that opportunity for an outlet there. So it's kind of a win-win for myself.
Absolutely. I definitely want to talk about the wild bird hunting trips, because this is something that you and I obviously connected on pretty quickly when we first met at the first trial. But I want to circle back to where you have your short hairs, you got your Griffons, and you have your standard poodles. So far, I've only seen you compete with your short hairs. I want to touch on the selection of breeds and what you might typically see at these events, because since I've participated in and we've kind of worked together, UFTA and myself, and kind of promoted it here and there, I've had a few people reach out. Obviously, I have a lot of people in the versatile dog space interested in possibly trying a new game out, and they're curious if their breed not only is allowed to run in it, but would they be competitive. And so you got your start with your Griffon in the game. Now you primarily run your short hairs. Kind of talk to me about your mindset and why you really only compete with your short hairs. And do you ever bring the Griffon out just to have a little bit of fun in the field as well?
Oh, absolutely, I do. Actually, I have my male Shakers, but who is my oldest bird dog, and then a female named Trudy. I trialed Trudy this past 2 weekends ago at Cedar Creek. She actually won the open division run. And they are just as competitive as the short hairs and the setters and the Brittany's. But what I tell everybody, especially I know several people that own Griffons as well, and I have won with my Griffons plenty of times. Trudy made it into the finals last year at Nationals on her own merits. I did just enough to get her qualified, and she was kind of an afterthought last minute. No fault to her. Just I was like, hey, I'm winning with these dogs, and I can only do so much. And it is a lot of work keeping a string of dogs tuned up and to be as competitive as they can be. Very regimented schedule. Every Tuesday, Thursday morning, we're killing birds over them, retrieving work a day a week, and then field trialing on the weekends or wild bird hunting somewhere. Mix that in with working a full-time job and trying to travel and do it. It gets tough. So, again, no fault to her. It's just so she barely got qualified last year to go to nationals, and I had to be in the top 6 dogs in her field to get into the finals, and on her own merit she did that, and then had 2 great runs in the open finals. Just had a little bad luck. One of her back bird in her first run got up and left the field on its own accord before we got down there, and we hunted and hunted, never could find the third bird. Go into the next run, and she puts up a 3-minute run. That she's very capable. She's a very talented dog. I tell people, though, all the time, you see a lot of German short hairs in this game. And my personal belief is because German short hairs are very handleable dogs, but they also have a big drive and a strong drive to them. So it's kind of more of it's just a common denominator. You also see setters and Brittany's, and occasionally you'll see a Vissla. But the biggest difference is with my dogs, my personal dogs, my Griffons are scent dogs, and they're not speed dogs. Are they just as capable of winning a field trial? Absolutely. And they have. I've got the trophies to prove it. The difference is when it comes down to it's a good scenting day, good conditions, it's going to take speed. My German short hairs are going to beat the Griffon because they just cover the ground just a little faster. And it's no fault to the Griffon. It's just that's their breed. And they just don't quite cover the ground hardly as fast. Now, when it comes to really tough scent conditions, or I need to handle a dog into a situation, I promise you my Griffons are going to beat my short hairs 1,000 times. It's just the way it is. They have a little better nose. I call them my meat dogs. Wild bird hunting, they're tough to beat. Especially in the grouse woods. Now I take them out west and go pheasant hunting with them. The short hairs are going to be putting more birds in there for me, covering more ground a little faster. Getting there a little quicker than what the Griffons are.
Yeah,
it's kind of a balance between them. And again, it depends on that day, just the situation, and if it's tough scenting conditions versus speed, it's the Griffon. If it's speed versus tough scenting conditions, it's the short hair,
Yeah.
It just
matching the right tool to the right job pretty much is
exactly
what we're talking about. And so, I again, the handful of trials I've gone to, I have seen a number of breeds. You listed off most of them, but I have seen other guys with, wire hairs are out there. I do know that some people have used poodle pointers. That there are people with these other breeds. It's not just guys with German short hairs and setters. There were pointers there at the last weekend that I was at. So don't let your proclivity for a certain pointing dog breed keep you from trying this new game, because what you just said, you have won and you have been competitive with your Griffons, so it can be done for sure. What about the flushing dog side of thing? This is something that I still haven't put my eyes on, are the flushing dog trials. Have you attempted doing the flushing dog circuit with your standard poodles at all? I know you said that you have gotten them out and kind of had some fun with them, but have you ever competed with them?
No, I never have competed with them. we've joked about it a handful of times. She's like, you should take one of them. Of course, she keeps them, the haircut's just so. Like, you should take one of them out and do. But no, I've never competed with them, but I have actually taken, we had an older female that we don't have anymore, but she was excellent at it. And a gentleman that has her now, pheasant hunts her, and he just recently sent my wife some pictures of her having the time of her life. And he's like, this dog's amazing. She'll beat all these pointing dogs to the bird every time on a retrieve. So, I may in the future. I just, again, it comes down to having the number of hours in the day and having the time to do it. It's the reason I haven't. And you mentioned a while ago off of UFTA and the different breeds. So UFTA recognizes all pointing and flushing breeds. As long as that dog is registered, it can compete in its respective. You can't run an English setter or an English pointer
in a flushing dog
flushing competition, but you can run it in the pointing division for sure. So just as long as it's a registered dog and it recognizes those pointing breeds and flushing breeds. So the poodles would most definitely, and there is a gentleman, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, that has run a poodle in the flushing division before, and done fairly well for himself from what I understand. So.
That's something that I'm excited to check out, because I do get the occasional listener asking, I have a flushing dog, what can I do? Because they can't really do the NAVDA testing. They can't do a lot of the trials. So UFTA having their own flushing division, you can look it up. And there are plenty of flushing dog trials going on in different locations throughout the year. I would imagine that you probably see more of the common flushing dog breeds outside of maybe just the standard poodle. I'm sure that you're going to see a lot of labs, springers. I don't know about cockers. You probably want a little bit longer legged dogs, but that's something that I would like to kind of test and watch, at least on the flushing dog trials, and kind of see how that game is run, or just the tempo of the dogs comparative to the pointing dogs.
Right. It's generally a little slower paced, but nonetheless, it's still awesome to watch, and watching a dog at the end of the day, with its handler working together to move across the field and work these birds is always impressive to me. You have the companion side of it, plus the drive of that dog that is bred into it, and watching all that come together, just, to me, has always been fascinating.
Yeah. So changing gears to the wild bird hunting, this is something that, depending, again, I'm not really calling out any specific organization or circuit, but like you kind of go and attend these events, and it's always to varying degrees with, the percentage of actual wild bird hunters. It's like you go to all of them, you're going to find the occasional wild bird hunter on even the most, I don't know, conservative organization that maybe they don't prioritize hunting as much as the others. They're still going to be there, but I can honestly say that the number of times I've shown up at a UFTA event, like, I would say, just venture a guess that comparative to all these other events that I've been to, the majority of people I've spoken to at UFTA has some interest and actual desire to wild bird hunt, more so than what I would say in other organizations, to where I got there, I didn't have much experience or could really relate to a lot of the trial discussion and talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I spoke to everybody at some point about wild bird hunting and the trips everybody's going on, and everybody was excited. This was early season. Everybody's talking about their plans and their trips, to where it wasn't just focused in on the points and competing and winning. It was really like, yeah, we're here to do that this weekend, but next weekend I'm headed to Michigan to grouse hunt. Next weekend I'm headed to the Dakotas or Iowa or wherever. It was kind of a breath of fresh air that I went to a hunting dog event, to where the majority of people were talking about actually hunting in the same light and the same passion as they discussed the game that they were playing.
Right. No, they do for sure. And you'll find, obviously some of them wild bird hunt more than others. Some of them, and I'm quite sure there's some guys out there that don't wild bird hunt at all that are competing in our organization. But as a general rule of thumb, there's majority of our guys do wild bird hunt. And I know from my experience, they're always open and willing to talk about it. I've got some friends that come down from New York that run with us, and I've never been to Maine grouse hunting. They go to Maine every year and grouse hunt for the last several years that I know of. So I picked the phone up and called them and said, hey, where do you go? What areas are you hunting in? And they, just like an open book. Here's where, and you may not necessarily get that outside of this organization. If I just walk up to a random guy on the side of the street and start talking bird hunting, even though he's a bird hunter, he might not tell me his little honey holes.
Probably not.
You build those relationships in this organization and running these dogs. Yes, at the end of the day, we're competitors against each other, but we also shake each other's hand, wish them the best of luck, and say, hey, we'll see you next time. And for the most part, that's truly heartfelt. That's the way they feel. And hey, man, where do I need to go up Maine to hunt? And they didn't hesitate one bit. Hey, this is where I go. These are the areas I hunt around there. So this is the type of birds we're getting in, and numbers, so on and so forth. And building those relationships all the way across the board have proven to enhance my wild bird hunting because of the situations that I've gotten myself into. These guys are like, hey, come go hunting with us. And so, Leo Barnes, who judges, and Jamie Barnes, his son, he and I run doubles together. And he also helps out. We train dogs together some, but we wild bird hunt a lot together. And that's what started us running doubles together, because our dogs are hunting so much together, that they just know each other and they work well together. So we're like, hey, let's stick these dogs in doubles, see what they do. When we come out, first trial, we stick them in doubles, and we're first and second with their two teams. I was like, well, let's keep doing this. It's working, And we don't even work those dogs together on a regular basis, but they've hunted for the last 4 years together on wild bird hunting trips, days that we just get together and work dogs. So that makes a difference. But, they took me on my first trip to the UP, and I honestly probably couldn't find a better place to go wild bird hunting right now. And, it's just, I get up there, we go, we have a good time, the camaraderie and all that going on around the cabin at night and while we're hunting. But I'd have never went to Iron Mountain, Michigan if it wasn't for them for the first time, and now it's an annual trip that we go on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I mean, it's one of those things. When I first entered this world, is I actually heard some people talking or making the claim that, like, you can't compete in a trial organization and then hunt wild birds at a high level on both of them. It's like some people were trying to claim that you had to do one or the other.
But stating that as far as the dog goes, or
yeah, from dog work, it's just like you can have like a really good trial dog, but then you have over here the dog, when it goes on wild birds, like it doesn't have the right hunt in it. It was really kind of more reflective over other organizations, to where certain dogs start learning some shortcuts and tricks, and people will actually train the dogs to trail the four-wheeler to the bird, right? And stuff like that, to where it's like you're not really training the skill set. You're just training to win the game, right? And so that, again, back to my earlier statement, as part of the reason why I kind of steer clear of certain trial organizations for so long. But again, the first thing that some of my buddies asked after me going in and running my first trial and getting my butt kicked was they were asking if I thought that it was a worthwhile venture in terms of like, are you going to learn or cost anything on the wild bird hunting side to compete at a high level in UFTA? And I can honestly say that I don't see that. I think that the skills that you can develop in the wild bird hunting directly correlates into the trial game. Even though it's pen raised birds, if you do a good enough job as your handler, as the handler, the owner, the trainer of your dog, and you're training the skill set as you should be, and you're not doing it with any kind of intentional, I'm going to do this just to win this game, but you create the dog with the solid hunt. You create the dog with the solid, consistent retrieve, and you hit those standards and you maintain those standards. I don't see how just running the trial is going to hurt the wild bird hunting and vice versa. It's just one of those. I think that that's more geared in other circuits or organizations, and it's not really so much, at least from what I've seen, prevalent in the UFTA. I don't know if any of that really made any sense or not.
Oh no, it does absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. In my opinion, field trialing dogs the way we do creates better wild bird hunting dogs or worse wild bird hunting dogs. And I think 99% of that has to do with how the dog's being handled by the trainer / owner. Doesn't have a thing to do with the field trial. And I think that's a common misconception that they think, oh, because that dog's field trial, he can't wild bird hunt. No. In fact, I've been on several wild bird hunting trips that I've pulled stuff that I use in a field trial field daily out and keep wild bird dogs from getting in trouble. For example, safety. My dogs, where they hear the word safety all the time, when a bird comes up in a field trial field and flies towards a judge, another competitor, the gallery, or a building, I can't make that shot on that bird safely without peppering somebody or raining shower pellets down on them. So I have to call safety. The judge, you get awarded your full points as if you killed the bird and the dog retrieved it. But it's a waste of time for my dog to continue on and chase that bird, and when I can move on down the field. So to my dogs, they hear the word safety, they're going to stop dead in their tracks and not chase that bird. And there's been times that I've been hunting in the UP, you're hunting around 2 track trails and logging roads, that I hear a vehicle coming and a bird flushed and it's headed toward that vehicle down toward that gravel road, and I need to stop that dog. And safety, they know that word safety. They hear the word safety, it is the same exact meaning as whoa, and they stop. So, hey, I can't chase that bird. That said safety, it's done. And to them, the bird's no longer in existence. They turn around, go back to hunting. And that kept that dog, he could very well could have ran right down to that gravel road. And it's just a replacement of whoa, basically. But I feel like in my experience training my trial dogs to field trial and wild bird hunt, because my dogs do both. I don't have any dog that just says, oh, he's a wild bird dog or he's a trial dog. My dogs do both and go both places and do it equally as well. I feel like my wild bird hunting, I spent more time getting my dogs into birds and less time hunting for birds, if that makes sense, because I could handle them and put them in the right areas and it wouldn't waste time hunting certain areas that I'm like, I know from where I've been getting birds up for the past 4 days, there's not going to be birds out in the middle of this field. They're going to be over here in the waterways. They're going to be in this thick cover, the cattails, or they're going to be, right on the edge of aspen, pine thicket instead of out in the middle of the aspens. And I can work that dog and just put him right in that area. Whereas in a field trial, there's a lot of times that you have a little more handle on that dog than what you would necessarily a wild bird dog. I just turn him loose and let him go hunt, and he's going to find birds and point them. You get into the aspect of pen-raised birds, and I've heard you mention that 2 or 3 times, and that is one of the biggest things I've heard people complain about. At the end of the day, training a dog is training a dog. It doesn't matter if it's a pen-raised bird or a wild bird. Yes, it is easier to educate a young dog on wild birds because they're not going to sit around and let them be foolish and jump around and play like a pen raised bird were. But that's where as a trainer, you may have to step back and step back and think outside the box a little bit. I've got a young dog that's running right in there on those birds and not even checking up to point. Go to the check cords, wool breaking, maybe a flank collar. Have you tried launchers? And when I'm working my dogs on a weekly basis, every week, sometimes I use Doctra bird launchers. Sometimes I use expanded metal steel traps that we fabricated in the garage, step-on traps. Sometimes the birds just get dizzied up and planted like they were, a wild bird sitting there in the brush themselves. And creating those different scenarios in training is what prepares you for the field trial, which eventually just prepares me for wild bird hunting. And I myself think 99% of it is BS, so to speak, when I hear somebody say, I just wild bird hunt. My dogs are wild bird dogs. If they're wild bird dogs, they have capability of being a field trial dog and vice versa. It's the trainer/owner's training ability and perception of what they want to do is more what it boils down to, because everybody's got the ability to do anything they want to do. It's just getting that mindset and training for it. And I know training for field trials, I did this yesterday morning. My wife will go with me, bless her heart. She's with me every step of the way, supporting me. But I'll start practicing shooting some skeet, and I'll have her throw doubles a lot for me. 9 times out of 10, I'm shooting at a single bird in a field trial. But that one time that 2 birds happen to get covied up in that field, and it happens. And we were, this was on a Thursday, we were shooting clays, and I said, hey, throw 2 back to back as fast as the machine will throw it. And she said, okay. She's throwing them, and I'm shooting doubles a bunch. That very Sunday trial, I turned around, I had a double in that run, killed both birds. And I said, see, it's practicing that shot. Half the time I wouldn't have been able to spun around and got on that other bird and made that shot. But sitting there doing that practice, and I do the same thing with my dogs. Everything from blind retrieves to where I have to throw golf balls to get them, in a certain area, or you calling them on safety birds. These guys go out here and you watch, which dogs have been worked on safety birds versus not. You work that, and on a daily basis, that dog most of the time is going to stop, stand right there, watch that bird fly off, come back to you and go back to hunting. The ones that don't, they're going to keep on chasing just like a wild bird dog would. And because they don't know what that word means until you teach them. They don't know anything until you teach them. Now they have natural instincts and natural ability that you enhance, just like pointing them. They don't come out of the box and learn to stand there for 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, however long it takes their owner to get there and flush that bird and kill it to them. They go pick it up and bring it to them. You have to teach them that. So to me, the wild bird hunting versus field trialing, there's no difference. It's good dog training at the end of the day.
Yeah. It comes down to, the easiest way to sum up what you're just describing is your priorities and your goals as a handler. Do you want to be good at both of them? I can say, obviously anybody that's listening to this is I prioritize wild bird hunting over everything, tests, trials, everything. I still participate in them, but wild bird hunting is what brought me to the dance. That's what's going to keep me dancing. That's what I want to do. But where we live, we just can't wild bird hunt effectively, or it's not fair to the dogs to just go out and just essentially do fun runs while me carrying a shotgun all the time. Is this gives me another avenue or channel to kind of get out there and just let the dogs have fun while actually being productive in the training. And so me coming out of the wild bird field and going into the trial field, the biggest difference is honestly more handler involved than the dog. It's like certain things on how I approach the dog on point is I'm so used to kind of circling back and coming at a 90-degree angle, if not flushing back towards the dog. And I just kind of do it so secondhand that when you deal with these pen raised birds, they're pretty stupid birds. So me flushing back towards the dog, I've had a handful of birds jump back up into essentially Rachel's mouth. Like they just run up to her, and it's like they'll kind of do that little flutter hop thing, and she just snags it. And I'm like, well, crap, there we go. So little things such as that, to where on the last run I came back into where I was flushing up beside her and away from her.
Yep.
And you know, that gave me a little bit better results. It's like figuring out those little just nuances to where, you know, this makes sense and may help me in the wild bird field, but it's not helping me here. But also that's something to where I've never prioritized the training of the dog to just stay staunch. I don't care if the bird jumps in your mouth or not, because again, back to the hunting mentality. If I go rough grouse hunting, this has never happened, and I'm sure that there's somebody out there this has happened to where the bird just flushes right at the dog.
Right.
It's just like, I don't care if she snatches that out of the air, because it's, we're out there to get the bird anyway. Right. And I actually did have one grouse flush into Quinn in Michigan this year, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, so like I've never prioritized that. So now I got to thinking, I'm like, well, maybe I do need to do some drills to where, like, even though Rachel's staunch and pointing, if I want to be serious in this game, she needs to be able to withstand a crappy pen raised bird from bouncing around and jumping in her face. She needs to be able to withstand that and be just as steady on that as if the bird is running away from her, which is really the only picture and presentation we've done. So it's like every time you run in this, I feel like you're going to come away with a different scenario or circumstance that you can then, if you want to, start trying to replicate and simulate in the training field. And then to what you're saying is it's like, try and plan for the worst, hope for the best, but plan for the worst, to where, hey, the double opportunity might present itself once a season. Yep. But if I prepare for it, it doesn't matter if it happens once a season. I can still capitalize on that and come out with a win. It's, we talk about that all the time, especially in these hunt tests. You have to prepare for the worst case scenario. You need to go do duck search training in the rain, because it might be raining on test day, stuff like that, to where I think in this game, it's more handler heavy than dog heavy, if that's fair to say.
Oh, absolutely. And it's always been my opinion, especially in our game with UFTA and wild bird hunting, in my experiences, the better I have been in the field trials, the dogs that I have been better with in the field trials competing wise, and just as far as just an overall, hey, this dog's doing their job, I haven't had one bit of issue with them wild bird hunting. And they get out, they find wild birds, they find several, not like they're slacking on finding wild birds at all. They find their fair share and continue moving forward. But I have found that a lot of times, because this wild bird scent's a little stronger, the wild birds are a little more jumpy, that a lot of times my trial dogs will come out ahead at the end of the day over somebody versus that just wild bird hunts. And it's just adding that little bit of extra element of control, because working on those pen raised birds, just like you said, 99.99% of the time, you're never going to have a dog catch that wild bird, but it's that pen raised bird. So if I get that dog to where he stands perfectly staunch, never move a muscle till I pull the trigger on that gun, I'm never going to have to worry about him catching a pen raised bird. Well, if I know he's not going to catch a pen raised bird, he's definitely not going to catch a wild bird.
Exactly.
And, so those little things, again, it just goes back to training worst case scenario and training for those situations. The field trial game, there's a lot of situations. You wouldn't believe the number of wild bird dogs that I have hunted over personally, that buddies own, that are excellent dogs, phenomenal dogs, that they don't field trial, and you throw a bird on the ground, let them watch it walking, and in 2 seconds that dog's grabbing that bird. But you throw a bird down in front of one of my dogs walking, that field trial, for the most part, they're going to stand there and watch that dog walk, because so many times that has happened in field trial. So I was like, I got to get my dog to stop doing this. So what I do, I come home, I pull the flight feathers on some pen raised birds, set my dog up there, let him point it. And when he points it, I just make that bird walk around circles around him and him sit there and watch him. And, it's kind of torturous to them, because you're going against their nature to want to grab that bird, their prey drive. But at the end of the day, I got to be competitive in that field trial. And there's a lot of times, hey, they may see a bird out walking. I need them to stop and point that bird and sit there and watch him walk till I can get to it and flush it.
Yeah.
And that has won me some trials being able to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes into, I know a few trainers that they implement that in their training program for their wild birds, because there is a wild bird applicability to this is it can directly apply to wild birds, where there are a lot of dogs that will establish and hold staunchly based on scent, but when they're coupled with the visual stimulus, they will break and bump that bird. And if we're talking wild birds, that bird's gone.
That's
right.
Opportunity, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been in numerous situations where my dog will point a bird, and if you're dealing with a runner or maybe just a bird that's just pinned down, if you have a dog that's going to break every time they see the bird,
yeah,
then that can really cost you some opportunities while bird hunting. And I'm sure we can kind of go down and cover a whole bunch of scenarios and kind of compare and contrast. And maybe that's something we do on a future episode that might be fun, is kind of comparing the common situations you find yourself in a trial and relate that to wild bird hunting. But I think that'll be a rabbit hole we don't want to go down right now. But man, it's been fun kind of picking your brain, knowing a little bit more on your backstory and what you appreciate about this. But, as we kind of close this out, I want to hear your take on this. You don't have to pick one or the other, field trialing or wild bird hunting. I think that's kind of too easy of a question. I want to hear what trialing means to you, though. If you can put into words, like what captures your attention so much, why is it so fun for you? And then we'll just wrap it up with that.
Then my enjoyment on the field trialing is the opportunity to spend more time with my dogs in the off season of wild bird hunting, alongside with my friends, the camaraderie that we have developed and the relationships we developed. We mentioned Lauren and Gabe at the start of this, and us all being neck and neck competing. And a couple of weeks ago, we were in Illinois out there competing. We're going head to head. But at the end of the trial, we all went and sat down and ate dinner that night. That camaraderie, breaking bread together and enjoying each other's company, that's what it's about. And so that's my enjoyment in it, as well as my dogs. That's the biggest part of it is spending time with my dogs and the competitiveness of me, an outlet being there for that. So that's my big enjoyment in it, and gives me more opportunity to do that than just birding.
I love it. I recorded with Lauren last night, and everybody listening to this, if stay tuned, it'll come out here in a few days after this episode. But not to be too much of a teaser or spoiler alert, but Lauren said the same thing. The camaraderie is what everybody loves, being out there and having fun with the dogs. The dogs have a blast with it, but at the end of the day, it still comes back to, the word gets overused a lot nowadays, but fellowship. You're talking about a group of people from all kinds of different corners of life and social situations still coming together with a common interest and passion that, like you said, you guys can go out there and compete head to head, and y'all been doing it all year long, all season long. But at the end of the day, when the trial's over, you guys are going and having a meal together and just talking about what, normal life and dogs and birds and all that stuff. So, anybody that's interested, they want to check it out. They can do a lot worse than UFTA, in my opinion. But, Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time and kind of sharing some of your thoughts and advice on this stuff. It was a blast getting to know you a little bit more, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having us on here.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this episode with Kevin Kiper, kind of going over everything UFTA. This was presented by Standing Stone Supply, Onyx Hunt, Final Rise, and Upland Gun Company. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this or my reaction on it, because I'm honestly doing another episode with Lauren Trout, which you guys will hear here in a couple days, to kind of round out this topic of UFTA. This is just something that, as I've spoken on the podcast a few times, and you heard on this episode, me venturing into the trial world, it's been kind of eye-opening and a lot of fun in a lot of different perspectives and ways. and it's honestly got me kind of thinking about other activities and other things that I can test out with my dogs. But that'll be a conversation for another time. But something that really, listening back to this episode, that really resonated with me afterwards was the talking point in this where Kevin was talking about how like truly anybody can actually come in and get started in this and start competing on day one. You can call it beginner's luck or just being lucky overall. You can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, the rules and competition and game is designed for anybody to just kind of come and have fun with their dogs and still have a chance at winning. Nobody wants to come and do this just for the participation or to say that they did it, that they want a chance at actually winning. And, winning isn't everything, but, we got to have fun and enjoy the process. But I'm not going to a competition style event without at least doing my best to win. And while I haven't been doing this very long, and we talked about how, the players that do it consistently, they still need luck on their hands. But even the people that start out, I mean, the first day that I ran trials here and within this organization, I almost had a really good run. I mean, it was boom, boom, boom. I got the first two birds very quickly. I mean, I was almost in and out of the field on a day where the sending conditions weren't that great, and we hit a snag like 3 minutes in. I mean, I almost walked out of the field with a 3-minute time, and just it kind of came unraveled on that third bird. And before you know it, it took, 11, 12 minutes to get out of the field. And so it's really interesting, we're going through and Rachel was the one running in this one. I've run trials with both Rachel and Quinn in the amateur and the open. And Rachel really has almost pieced together a few really good runs, but we haven't been able to put the bow on it. We haven't been able to complete the entire run. It's like we'll get 2 out of the 3 birds and we'll get close to having a really stellar run, and for whatever reason it just doesn't come to fruition, doesn't come to light. So it keeps me hungry, keeps me wanting to compete, and hopefully I can make it to a few other trials. As of right now, we can no longer get started and qualify for the nationals at the end of February. Right now, everything that is being run now applies and qualifies you for the nationals in February or March of early 2025. So you can still go out and check it out. You can come to Kentucky, check out the nationals if you would like. The point leader chase is over. I know who won it right now. You guys will hear it here in a couple days, or you can just Google it or hit the show link if you want to find out now. But yeah, I'll just kind of save some more UFTA talk or feedback for the episode that I have with Lauren here in a couple days. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks again to everybody for joining in and hitting download and play, especially the supporters over at Patreon, patreon.com/gundoggeryourself. The voluntary contributions that they provide this podcast and this platform really goes a long way. We wouldn't be here without them. So just throwing that out there in case you enjoyed this episode or prior episodes and you would like to show your support. Again, it's patreon.com/gundoggeryourself. And with that being said, we'll sign off here and we'll talk to you here in a couple days. Thanks.